They say every grave tells a story. But here in Oakwood Cemetery, the stories don't wait for you to read them. They whisper them, whether you want to hear them or not. My name is Dr. James Barrett. Once I saved lives with steady hands and a scalpel. Now I dig graves in this ancient cemetery where three of the town's oldest families have buried their dead for generations. I didn't choose this path. After losing my wife, Sarah, and our unborn child on my own operating table, I couldn't hold a scalpel without shaking. But here, among the dead, my hands are steady again. Perhaps because here I can still help people, just not in the way I expected. The Blackwoods, the Sinclairs, and the Carvers, their names are carved into half the headstones here. Old money, old secrets, old sins. It started on an autumn evening just as the sun was setting, behind the ancient oak tree that dominates the cemetery's north corner. The ground was still soft from yesterday's rain, as I dug a fresh grave for old Mrs. Sinclair. That's when I first heard them. At first I thought it was just the wind through the leaves. But wind doesn't speak names. Wind doesn't beg for justice.
Find her, beneath the oak.
I stopped digging, listened harder. The whispers grew clearer, rising from the freshly turned earth like steam on a cold morning.
The three must pay. Time runs short.
After 20 years as a doctor, I know the difference between coincidence and pattern. 3 families, 3 generations. Every 33 years, death visits them in the same order, youngest to oldest. Natural causes, the death certificates say. But nature isn't this precise. The pattern is repeating now. Little Sophie Blackwood, only 6 years old, has started speaking in an ancient dialect in her sleep. The Sinclair's youngest just disappeared for 3 days, returning with no memory but strange symbols carved into his palms. And young Peter Carver, he's begun carving headstones in his sleep. Something was buried here long ago, something that refuses to rest. And the whispers, they're getting louder. I've started researching the town's history. In 1923, during a lunar eclipse, a young healer named Sarah Collins was executed. The 3 families united against her, afraid of her growing influence. Her final curse still echoes through their bloodlines.
For 3 generations times 3, your blood shall thin and your children shall fade. Only when truth lies bare beneath the oak will your chains break.
The next lunar eclipse is in 3 days. The whispers tell me I'm running out of time. Sophie Blackwood's fever is rising, just like all the others before her.
Do it now.
But this time will be different. This time someone is listening to the whispers. Someone who understands both medicine and death. Someone who can bridge the gap between science and spirit. The dead keep better records than the living. Every headstone is a page in history, every epitaph a confession. But some truths are carved deeper than stone. I've spent 3 sleepless nights in the town archives, piecing together the story of Sarah Collins and the 3 families who sealed her fate. The Blackwoods, the Sinclairs, the Carvers. Their signatures are all there on her death warrant, dated October 31st, 1923. The Blackwoods were the accusers. Dr. Theodore Blackwood, the family patriarch, claimed Sarah's herbal remedies were causing, not curing, the town's illnesses. Interesting theory from a man whose own medical records show an unusually high mortality rate.
The witch Collins corrupts the natural order of medicine. Her treatments defy scientific explanation. She must be stopped before more harm is done.
But Sarah's personal journal, hidden in the library's sealed records, tells a different story. She had discovered something in the Blackwoods' practice, experiments that went beyond the bounds of medicine. The Sinclairs provided the authority. Judge William Sinclair presided over her trial, if you can call it that. 3 hours from accusation to sentence. The court records are surprisingly detailed, yet somehow missing key witness testimonies. And the Carvers, they built her tomb. Master Mason Frederick Carver's diary entry from that night is particularly disturbing. We sealed her beneath the oak, as instructed, but the stone wept blood. All night we heard her voice, not screaming, singing. By morning the markings I'd carved had changed themselves. Today I spoke with Elizabeth Blackwood at the hospital. Sophie's condition is worsening. The symptoms match every third-generation death in their family records. Fever, speaking in tongues, drawing strange symbols.
The oak remembers. The oak knows.
Dr. Barrett, I appreciate your interest in our family history, but Sophie needs modern medicine, not folk tales.
Hospital's tests show nothing wrong. Just like every other third-generation child, they all died at dawn on the third day of their symptoms. Sophie's time runs out tomorrow. I visited Marcus Sinclair next, at his office overlooking the town square. The construction permits for removing the old oak were on his desk. Tomorrow's lunar eclipse would be the perfect cover for destroying evidence.
That tree is dying, Doctor. Progress requires sacrifice. Surely you of all people understand that.
His words echoed the letter his grandfather wrote to Sarah Collins the night before her death. The final piece came from James Carver. I found him in his workshop carving Sophie's headstone. He hadn't been commissioned to do so. His hands were bleeding.
The stones speak to me, Doctor. They always have. But lately, they're screaming.
The curse isn't just killing these families, it's revealing their sins, generation by generation. Sarah Collins didn't corrupt the natural order. She discovered how the Blackwoods had been manipulating it. She didn't defy justice. She uncovered how the Sinclairs had perverted it. And the Carvers, they didn't just bury her, they buried the truth. But tonight, during the eclipse, that truth will finally come to light. The whispers have shown me what I need to do. Each family must face their past. Each must make amends. The old oak's roots run deep, feeding on secrets buried in unmarked graves. By dawn, either Sophie Blackwood will wake up healthy, or another child will join the whispers beneath the tree. And this time I'll be ready. My name is Dr. James Barrett, and the dead are ready to speak. The lunar eclipse begins in 1 hour. Sophie Blackwood's fever has reached 106. The old oak tree is bleeding sap from every branch. And the whispers have become a chorus. I've gathered everything needed for the ritual. Soil from each family's oldest grave, water from the town's original well, Sarah Collins' silver pendant found in the Sinclair's attic. And most importantly, the truth, preserved in journals, letters, and dying confessions spanning 100 years. The three families are gathering now beneath the oak, not out of belief, but desperation. Even Elizabeth Blackwood, ever the skeptic, carries her niece Sophie through the iron gates. Marcus Sinclair has brought his construction crew, either to witness the ritual or to cut down the tree at first light. And James Carver, he's already here, hands bloody from carving symbols into the oak's trunk.
Sophie's heart rate is dropping. Whatever you're planning, Doctor, Barrett, do it now.
This is absurd. We should be at the hospital.
The hospital can't help her. Only the truth can.
I place Sarah's pendant in the center of the ritual circle. The moon's shadow begins to eat away at its full face. The whispers grow louder with each passing minute. This is where science meets spirit, where modern medicine confronts ancient wrongs. I am no longer just a doctor or a grave digger. Tonight I am a bridge between worlds. By stone and blood, by science and spirit, we call upon Sarah Collins.
She's here.
The truth spills out like blood from a wound. Dr. Theodore Blackwood's experiments on unwitting patients. Judge Sinclair's buried evidence. The Carvers' hidden graves. 3 families united in darkness, now forced into light.
Grandfather, What did you do?
The records, all true. The stones never lie.
The ground beneath the oak begins to crack. Sarah's unmarked grave, hidden for a century, finally reveals its secrets. Her bones, wrapped in a cloth bearing the symbols of all three families, the final proof of their collaboration. The eclipse reaches totality. Darkness covers the cemetery, but something glows beneath the oak. Sarah's pendant pulses with ancient light. The ritual reaches its climax.
For 3 generations, times 3, the price was paid. Truth lies bare beneath the oak. The chains are broken.
A surge of energy pulses through the cemetery. Sophie's fever breaks. The whispers fade to silence. The oak's bleeding stops. In the hospital records, cause of death entries begin to change, revealing the truth hidden for a century. Dawn breaks. The eclipse ends. Sophie Blackwood opens her eyes, free of fever. Marcus Sinclair tears up the construction permits. James Carver's hands finally stop bleeding. The curse is broken, but its lesson remains. Some secrets refuse to stay buried. Some truths demand to be heard. And sometimes the whispers from below are voices of justice, waiting for someone to finally listen. We buried Sarah Collins again, properly this time. Her headstone bears her true story, carved by James Carver's steady hands. The three families' crests unite around her name, no longer in conspiracy, but in remembrance. I thought I had lost my calling when I could no longer perform surgery. Now I know better. Sometimes healing requires more than medicine. Sometimes it requires us to listen to the whispers from below,